don't necessarily trust, these 23andMe. I don't feel comfortable giving my DNA. How do I find my roots? And then how do I get in touch with my ancestors?
Okay. Well, first you have your domestic roots, and then you have your continental roots. Okay. So our domestic roots, that is finding your ancestors who either lived or were born on American soil, right?
Correct.
So most of us probably have anywhere from 6 to 16 great-grandparents we can go back to on American soil. 6 to 16.
My great-grandmother actually is still living. She is 104 years old.
Oh, that's beautiful. So guess what? The first thing you need to do is notebook and you sit at her feet and have the names and birthdays of as many of her ancestors as she possibly can. And you need to do this before she joins the ancestors. Now, we're not hoping that she joins anytime soon. Okay? Right. But you want to go as soon as possible, because when she joins to the ancestors, you will no longer be able to get that information. It's gone.
Right.
Okay? If you have a grandmother that's 100 years old, that means she was born like 1920, which means her parents were probably born in the 1890s, which means her grandparents were probably born around the end of slavery, the beginning of the Civil War, which means she has a lot of history to tell you.
Right.
And you get it. Don't make the mistake that Dr. Umar made. I had a great aunt, on my mother's side. She told me to come and get the family's history from her. I was supposed to go and get the family history from Aunt Ruth, and I never got around to getting the Aunt Ruth, and she's an ancestor now. And there's no way for me to get all that information that she was going to give me. Not delay. Go and get it.
Right.
So what you need is names, birth dates or death dates, states or counties. If you know someone's name, no matter how long ago, know their name and you know their birth date or their death date, or you know the county or the state where they were born, you can all there is to know about that person if it is recorded.
Right.
Also keep in mind that if you have an ancestor that was famous on something, it's much easier to find who they were. So let's say you had a great-great-great-great-grandfather who was a black preacher somewhere. The newspapers for him, you'll be able to look, because his name will be in other places because he was well known. If you had a grandfather who was a principal of a public school or something like that, anybody who lived a public life, it's much easier to find them. It's the ones who didn't live public life. Now, when it comes to your continental DNA from Africa, I get lucky, because as your grandmom is giving you that information and you start digging up those records and you visit the counties where your ancestors were born, because you're going to have to do some traveling. You're going to have to travel. You're going to come across where some of them came from. It's going to be a record. You might find, if you had an ancestor who was in slavery, you might find the original record of sale from the slave master.
Wow.
Which tell you where your ancestor came from. It may
I didn't know that information existed.
Yes. Not all the time, but a lot of times it shows where they came from, because remember now, slave trade business.
Right.
Unfortunately, selling our ancestors was a business. So in business record, it may tell you that they came from Nigeria, or they came from Congo, or they came from the Ghana region. You follow me? So you may look up on that information. But I would say, because I agree with you, I don't trust the DNA companies at all.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm going to tell you why I don't trust them. The number one business of the DNA company is to sell your DNA, not to tell you where I'm from. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I'm going to say it again for the listening audience. The number one business of the DNA ancestry companies is not to find out where you come from. It's to sell your DNA to pharmaceutical and military industrial corporations. If you don't believe me, go on the website of any of these ancestry companies and look and read the fine print. They tell you that when you give them permission to test your DNA, you also give them permission to sell and use your DNA.
Yeah, that I've the only knowledge of that was, I think back to the case of Henrietta Lacks, but that didn't sit right with me, and I assumed that, of course, since technology has advanced and things have advanced, of course they're going to put things like that in fine print. But I had no idea that they were selling it to pharmaceutical companies.
Absolutely.
That, but I always felt uncomfortable with.
And here's the way I see it. Those of us who are the descendants of enslaved Africans, we were brought from all over the African continent. I mean, let's look. You have 4 grandparents.
Yep.
You have 8 great-grandparents.
Yep.
You have 16 great-great-grandparents.
Yep.
You have 32 great-great-great. You will go back so far. We ended up having 64 different grandparents. There is a very real possibility that all 64 of your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents came from different African countries.
Right.
In other words, in your DNA right now could almost be an ethnic nation from every single country in Africa. Right. So for me, I don't need to know specifically where I come from because I know there's no one specific place.
Right.
When we got here, they mixed us with every other nationality.
No choice.
The slave master had no concern with whether you were Yoruba or Igbo or Fulani or Wolof or Zulu or Xhosa or Swazi. He did not care. We were mixed as needed. So when somebody says, I'm from Ghana or I'm from Nigeria, they're only giving you one strand of DNA. They're only giving you, I am from all over Africa, and so are you. And for me, I am comfortable enough with knowing that. Because there's no way I'm going to find every single origin for every strand of my DNA. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. That would be helpful because I want to be more in tune with my ancestors. I find and have been researching about using your ancestors and allowing them to guide you. And I feel that I'm unable to fully tap into that without at least digging deeper into my origins.
Okay, couple things. Number one, you might want to watch a couple of YouTube videos on African ancestral veneration. Ancestral veneration. There's a lot of information online about ancestral veneration. There's books you can purchase on ancestral veneration. I'm initiated as a priest of the ancestors, right? But in the meantime, you can build you an ancestral altar. And by building you an ancestral altar, all you have to do is find a table, a shelf, a corner in the room, put down a white cloth. White represents the ancestors because it's the white light of consciousness, right? You put a white sheet. You get you a clear bottle of water, get you a nice vase, something that you like. You fill that water, you keep the water clean, you keep the water full because ancestors need water. Water is a communication and travel medium for spirit. Get you some fresh fruit, you put the fresh fruit on your altar. Make sure you change it before it gets old. Never leave anything dead on an altar. The altar is for life.
I can see that.
Get you a white candle. Whenever you talk to your ancestors, you light the candle and you talk to them just like they were right in front of you.
Right.
You pray and you ask God to bless that space. You make sure you don't let anybody touch that space at all because they can pollute it with their spiritual DNA.
Right.
Then you also need to put some mementos from your ancestors to draw their energy to your altar. So if you have your grandmom's brush, or if you lost your little cousin, you may have his favorite hat. You may have another ancestor's pipe or comb or favorite cup or spoon or book or Bible. You put those mementos on the altar because that draws their ashe to you.
Okay.
And they sit there and you get an African drum or a bell and you ring the bell whenever you're ready to communicate. And you start off with a prayer to the Most High, and then you start off petition to your ancestors to let them know, I'm ready to speak with you. There's some things I need to talk about. And then you start talking. I also recommend that you keep an ancestral journal. So while you talk to your ancestors, you also write to your ancestors, and you leave the journal on the altar. So if you have a certain wish or request or a certain problem that you're dealing with, you write it out and you put it on the altar. Okay? What I always tell people who are just getting started with ancestral veneration, because we worship God, we don't worship our ancestors, okay? We venerate them, we communicate with them, we respect them, right?
Yeah.
Ask them for their assistance with something in your life. So it's something that if they help you, you know that it came from you, that it came from them and not any human being.
Right.
Them. And give it a week or two. You ask them sincerely, and it is felt in heart because they have to feel you now. This ain't intellectual, this is spirit. They got to feel you. You got to put some emotion into this conversation. Give it a week or two and see if they don't impact that situation for you. They may not solve the whole thing, but they'll impact it for you. But ancestral veneration is a slow and steady building of a relationship with your departed ancestors. Because when you're talking to them, you're actually talking to your inner self. Because you are a manifestation of them. They are you, and you are them. There's no separation. So when you get your ancestors' power by pouring water, that's another thing. Make sure you have a plant. You need a plant, and then you will take some of the water out of your vessel, and you will call each ancestor's name 3 times, and you will pour into the plant. That's something on the bottom of the plant so the water don't run. Call each name 3 times. Water onto soil represents the meeting of the semen and the egg. That's how we bring forth life. So we do the same thing when we call the ancestors. Call their names, and then you also call on the names who you don't know. You say, all the other ancestors whose names I don't know from my 4 lines. Mom's moms, mom, dad, 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 mom. 4 lines. From those 4 lines leads to infinity because there's no stopping until you get back to the first woman and man that God put in Africa, right? But you call on ancestors whose names I don't know. Please come help my issues. Surround me with protection, okay? Be alert when I'm in dangerous situations. Help me find my job. Help me choose my mate, my life partner. Any issue you got, you ask the ancestors for your help because they have an obligation to you because they want to see the family successful. They want to see the family flourish. They want to see the family do good. And so if you call on them regularly, though, princess, it must be regularly. If you only call on them when you need them, you may not get their help. You have to call on them once a week at least. If you can do it every day, do it every day. But at least once a week. At least once a week. And I recommend that it be on the day that you were born. So I'm born on a Wednesday, so I try to communicate with my ancestors on a Wednesday. You may want the same thing. But slow and steady, build your altar, keep it clean, talk to your ancestors, and before you know it, they'll send you some signs that they're in your life.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Haven't heard that before. Thank you so much, Dr. UmarJohnson. I really appreciate it.
Ever desire to get a spiritual reading, send me an inbox message on Instagram, and I'll send you the contacts for those in my spiritual team who do my spiritual work. These are the people who actually work, and they can do a spiritual reading for you, and that'll also get you started in this tradition.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Take care now.
You too. Bye-bye.